To the Manifesting Millions podcast. I am your host, Rashida McFerrin, and today we are talking about why is talking about money so taboo. So we're just going to jump right in. We're going to jump right in to the episode. And so the topic today is why are people so weird about talking about money? This is a topic of conversation that came up with me and my mother not too long ago. And one of the things that I've noticed as a millennial in dealing with my mother and my grandparents and just my family in general is that talking about money was always so taboo. I graduated from undergrad, then I went on to go into banking around 2006, 2007. I was in graduate banking school at the Southeastern School of Banking in partnership with Owen Graduate School of Management in Nashville at Vanderbilt, basically. I remember learning some stuff in school and coming back home and talking to my family, specifically my grandmother, who was the matriarch at the time, about positioning ourselves as a family to build wealth. And one of the things that she said to me bothered me so much because she was like, she kind of shunned my approach to addressing her. And then she said one of my uncles had all of the business taken care of. She didn't really know the details of it and that I needed to talk to him in regards to anything in regards to our family business, which at the time was farming, which is still farming pretty much till this day. And so when I addressed my uncle about building a community, being a builder in where we're from, his response to me was, that's the problem with Black folks now. You always try to sell something. We ain't selling nothing. We ain't selling nothing. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, we've been holding on to land for the past 4 generations. Like, your assets only appreciate if you take a portion of the asset, turn it into something valuable, and then sell it to people, and then receive income back into the business and making it grow. And I literally was funding people, not Black people, every day for $1 million lines of credit who were out in our region just going out and doing the exact same thing that I wanted to do. And so from there, I realized a few things. I realized number one, that I was on my own in regards to building my wealth. And number two is that, like, the older generations just don't understand the concept of what it means to build wealth in modern day times. And specifically, like, our gen is the gen that changed everything. So we're born in the 80s and we are originally technically the first digital generation. And then we have Gen Z who are coming behind us. Then we have Gen A, which are basically the babies. They will know nothing but digital wealth, digital currency, digital money, anything in regards to a tangible asset. By the time they turn 20 years from now, if they were born this year, they will know nothing about it, probably other than buying like a house or acquiring assets if they are financially intelligent, right? And so me really not realizing that at 25 that I was on my own in regards to building my wealth was like, wow. So I've had the beauty of watching the previous generations, do what worked during their generation. And my mother, who is a baby boomer, is the first of my grandparents' kids. They were actually my grandfather was born right before the Great Depression, and my grandmother was 10 years younger than him. So she was born in the 30s. So it was more so World War era. And then my great parents, which was her mother and father, were basically technically post Reconstruction era, right? And so everything we acquired during that time. My great grandfather Jake was obsessed with buying land, and we called him Jake, even though, like, when I met him as a kid. I think he passed away when I was probably like 10. We always called him Jake because he was just that cool. But the way that money or wealth is created has changed. And so I want to talk about today why it's so taboo for us to talk about money. Even like, I remember when I was applying for undergrad and I had to get the financial aid information for my mom. My mother was a teacher. She didn't make that much money and she was a single parent household. And so when I actually got that information from her, it literally was like pulling teeth from her. She did not want to tell me how much money she made. And then she did not want to talk about the fact of how she applied her making money to everyday expenses. I was 17 at the time, and I want to say she made like 24 grand a year. It was literally no money. I started working very early, so that I could be able to afford the things that I wanted in life. And back then, it was in my teen years, it was clothes and get my hair done and going out with my friends, right? And so I started working early on because I realized she didn't have the money because she had filed bankruptcy. I think like when I was 11 or 12, coming out of a bad marriage. And so I knew she was rebuilding her life. And at that point, I was like, I'm just going to be responsible for myself. I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to buy the clothes that I want. I'm going to eat the food that I want. And I'm going to hang out with my friends. And she just doesn't have to worry about me anymore. So this is me around 14. And I've pretty much been like that pretty much since then, charting my own path. And so I've always been an independent kid. I've always been very type A. I've always been a go getter in regards to the things that I want to acquire in life. But I just remember that experience being very difficult for her because my question to her was, if you make $24,000 a year, then why are we always so broke? And her words to me were this: Rashida, shut up and get out of my face. No, I'm like, I'm a senior. And so I'm like, no, seriously, like, yo, if you make money, why we ain't got no money? And what she didn't take the time to explain to me was that $24,000 in 1998 wasn't a lot of money. It was very low income slash poverty line almost. And considering that, like she had been working as being a teacher for years. And so I never understood why we didn't have money. But as she started giving me numbers for my financial aid application, it started to make sense to me because I had no clue as to how I was going to pay for school. And then I remember saying to myself at some point, if I have to get student loans, then I'll just get student loans and do what I got to do to pay off my loans later. And we'll figure it out from there. And a lot of things transpired in regards to me being able to afford school. I found out was because she was a state teacher, right? She technically, in a sense, worked for the government. They gave you a 20% discount on tuition throughout the state of Tennessee while I was going to school in Middle Tennessee. And so when I found that out, I applied that. A couple of other things that transpired. I eventually got on scholarship because I was going to the Air Force and I was able to afford school. And then there are other opportunities that just pretty much I manifested. I like to say they found me, but I know I manifested it because I was very intentional about creating money around my experience and me being in Middle Tennessee so that I could stay there and complete undergrad because it was important to me. But a few things we're going to talk about today is enough about my personal experience. So, number one is the taboo of don't you talk about money. And that's pretty much how it came to me as I was growing up. Even as I approached my uncle when I was trying to get him to think holistically about where we were during the time it was 2006, the mortgage market was popping. Like, look, here's how we as a family can make money, but I was shut down like at the door. And so it's kind of like what progress will we make is based on the previous generation's ability to be able to be open to new ideas and new things, because the way that always was doesn't always work. And had he taken my advice back then, the family business would have been in so much of a better place today that it is. And I'm not saying that it's not growing and thriving. I'm not sure. I actually don't really know. I just know that our family farm is still there as far as financials are concerned. I don't ask any questions any longer because the one time I did ask questions, I was shut down. I made a choice back then that I was going to build my own financial wealth and I was going to build my own assets. And I don't have to ask anybody about how to build something because it's mine. Hello. So, but not talking about money to your kids as they're growing up is the biggest mistake I think you could actually make. In regards to changing that dynamic within my own family, with my son, I started talking about money very early on. My son had a debit card by the time he was 6 because I wanted to start early in teaching him how to manage money. Now, did it go perfectly? Absolutely not. Does he know about spending? Yes, but he also knows about
the fact that in order to spend money, you have to make money. And whether that be through a business, through a job, through investments, I have to do something to initiate the transaction of incoming money into my bank account in order to have outside of the money that I give him in regards to just, allowance or whatever. I started doing that super early. And as he got older, I would relay more information to him so that he was comfortable knowing how much money I made as a single Black woman in corporate finance. I wanted him to know how much money I was making so he can at least have um, a threshold of what he's looking for when he's going out to the marketplace and trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. If you expose your kids to the numbers early on, then what happens is they begin to develop a financial intelligence and understanding about money and creating income and investing in stuff that slowly grows as they mature. And you just answer their questions as they're asking. My son came to me. This was, I think, right after we went to the Prairie View slash a Prairie View versus Grambling game. The Cotton. Wait, what was it called? The Fair Park Classic. I think in September, at the end of September, he was like, "Well, Mom, I was thinking that at some point, if I'm going to college, I'm probably going to move off campus. I would think I would buy a rental property because, just living on campus is expensive and I can rent those rooms out to like my friends." And I was like, "Buddy, that's a great idea." Because especially if you consider going to an HBCU, HBCUs seems to always have issues with housing. How smart would it be for him to buy a house? Like, say he bought a 4-bedroom house, he rented out each room to somebody who needed housing. Technically, that's his income for the year. Of course, I am probably overseeing that transaction. Please don't think I'm just going to throw him out there like that and let him figure it out. It's that kind of thinking at 16 that you need to have in order for you to build financial intelligence in investing in real estate. So when I was his age, I knew I wanted to be in real estate because I grew up on a farm and I knew about land, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with real estate. And then when I was in college, I knew I wanted to be in real estate, but again, not really knowing because nobody really told me specifically what I needed to be focused on in regards to my studies from my fam, other than I saw the examples of what was before me. And I tried to make sense of that as I mature. We want to erase the taboo of don't talk about money to let's talk about money. What questions, especially to your kids, do you have to me as a parent that you want me to answer about money? I'm going to be 100% transparent and I'm going to try to explain it in a very simple fashion so that it can make sense to you. And what you don't understand, there are no worries. Just come back when you're a little older and may have matured more, and we'll approach that topic again. So that is number one. Number two, other advice from our previous generations that don't talk about money is we save, 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 but you don't invest. And I get it. Coming out of the Great Depression, it makes sense. The way it happened in regards to the generational changes that come down the pipeline is I can understand the concept of save, save, save. And I'm not saying don't save. I'm absolutely not saying that. You should save your money. You should save a percentage of your money that you put into a cash reserves account that is there and needed when you need to pull on it. Notice I didn't call it an emergency fund. I've mentioned this previously. I call my savings cash reserve accounts because that's what the bank do. The banks put specifically away a certain amount of cash reserves that they need just in case something happens. I would have a big issue if my bank called it an emergency fund. Instead of just save, 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 I want you to save, 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 and invest. Okay? And I want you to figure out what you're good at investing in. If you've listened to my podcast up until now, you know that I talk about finding the investments that work for you. Don't just go jumping into random investments because that's what everybody's doing. You're seeing it on social media, you're seeing it on Google. Don't do that because just like a lot of people make money, for every person that makes money, there are probably 100 to 1,000 people that are losing money because they do not know what they're doing. Would love for you to know what you are doing before you go make those investments. So you could be comfortable with the fact that you're making the investment and that you understand the risks that are associated with investing because it's always going to be a risk involved. That's number two. And number three, the other advice that we were given as millennials is living for later opposed to living for now because they are the generation, both Gen X and baby boomers are the generations of you work 30 years or 40 years and then you retire and then you use your money after you retire because that is the way society was set up. Millennials are kind of like, I'm not waiting 40 years. Ain't no kind of to it. This is period. Millennials are absolutely like, I am not waiting 40 years to go travel to Bali or Africa or Dubai. I'm going to figure out how I can afford that trip now, take me and my family on these trips. We're going to live out the best experiences for our life in the now, opposed to later. Because by the time I get to the point that I'm ready to retire, per se, I always said that I would retire by the time my son finished high school. And then I put like a contingency on it. I was like, well, but if he goes to college, right, I still might need to work for another 4 or 5 years. And so, like, when my son was born, like within that first year, I had Excel mapped our lives out up until like he gets into graduate school. And I have been told on several occasions, Rashida ain't that much planning in the world. I beg to differ. I am a Virgo. My love language is planning. What are you talking about? Because if you don't plan, you're going to end up in Never Never Land. And you're going to be one of those people who are working until they 85 years old because you ain't got no retirement. That is not me. The devil is a liar. That will not be me. I rebuke that. And that's a no. That's a no for your girl. I encourage you, if you have not charted a plan for you and your family, it's really not that hard. I was looking at our life path chart journey in Excel the other day, and I was like, well, for the most part, we're pretty much right on schedule. Do things happen in life that are unscheduled? Absolutely. Are those moments that are not planned? Yes, this is life because life be life in. But for the most part, in regards to the way I built the foundation and the framework for our life, we are on schedule. I'm going to say that I understand the advice that was given to us by our parents, and it's important for you to live later because we all have to take into account that. So for millennials, inflation done been through the roof the past 4 years. Like we in shock. Every time I go to the store to buy an item, and it's double the price of what it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. Like, yo, I'm like tripping out. My son has gotten so tired of me like complaining about the fact that the prices have basically in my head they've quadrupled, not just doubled, because we've never experienced inflation like this. Now, have we experienced bad markets? Yeah. We graduated into a recession in 2003. So experiencing a bad market wasn't a big deal. And then 3, 4 years later, the market tanked. The mortgage crisis. That's so sad that inconsistency and unexpected changes were the norm for the markets we were in, but that's the reality of what we graduated into. But inflation like this, your girl ain't used to this. Your girl didn't account for everything doubling and tripling, and yeah, like that's done put me back to the drawing board a million times over. Not a million times. I'm exaggerating, but it's allowed me to have to go back and redirect some stuff and put a little more planning in place to make sure that we're taken care of because I didn't account for that. Now I heard people say inflation before, but it never happened like it has now. And it's out of control. I want to encourage you to factor in living for now and building that into your budget as a norm. That's pretty much it. In regards to why talking about money is so taboo and so crazy, we just have to change the conversation. Like, that's the solution to it. We have to not teach our kids what our parents and grandparents taught us. We have to be transparent about money with our kids. We have to teach our kids about money from early ages instead of waiting until they get to college and then maybe talking to them about it when they in college and then they get into the real world and they like slapped in the face like, yo, what is going on? Don't do that. The most loving thing for you to do as a parent is to not do that to your child. Okay? that is it for today's episode. Thank you for listening. As always, you can find us on Rashida.ai, and I am on socials as Rashida McFerrin on Instagram and Facebook. And as always, if you like what you've listened to, please leave us a 5-star review. Those ratings help our listenership grow and help the podcast grow. And I can keep making amazing financial content like this that is relatable and keeps you manifesting millions and realizing that manifesting millions is a process, a journey, and it's not something that happens overnight. So until then, I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.